So, is that true? Church of Christ? That's who we are. If it's not in Scripture, we're not doing it. Comes with a little bit of caveats and grace for yourself, because that's not 100% true. But I admire the starting position. It's a wonderful opening statement. And then you get to defend your building, because that ain't in Scripture either. So, that's why a lot of times, if you go visit a Church of Christ over Christmas, you won't see anything out in the foyer. I mean, it's out there right now in Hobby Lobby, right? You could buy a Christmas tree today. And we ain't even had Halloween yet. Don't get it twisted, though. That's not because everyone loves Christ. That's just capitalism pulling everything forward. If they could figure out how to put every holiday out every day of the year and not waste money on stock and merchandise, you'd be able to buy a Christmas tree in July. Can you celebrate the holiday secularly? You know what that means, right? That means that it's about a tree. It's about Father Christmas. There's some presents under the tree for the children. For me, because everybody's giving me gifts. Can you do that and still be right with God? Yeah? You think so? I'm not disagreeing. I didn't mean that to come as a challenge. So we have 2 yeses and everybody else just kind of turtled up like you weren't sure. It's okay. Remember our discussion previously about Scripture. God's fairly ambivalent about your secular holidays. Truly is. And if you celebrate the 4th of July and you think you can't celebrate Christmas secularly, my question to you is, why are they different? I wish Hans were here. Hans would have words. How about that?
I disagree, because I think every sermon has to do with Christ.
Ooh. That's right, that's right. You're hired. Somebody double her pay. Technically correct. So let's split that hair. I have been in so many churches of Christ on Christmas Day where there was no mention of the fact that it was Christmas. That's what that statement means. How many of us have been in one of those? Some of you have just been born and you're like going to die here, right? But the rest of us get around. We have cars. We go visit friends. I don't know what the rest of you do. So why?
By the way, Ray, my wife says, having been here longer than anyone, that this church didn't mention Christmas Day when she was here.
Okay. So Bonnie is true on all of that information. She's older than you. Fred and Bonnie were married in this church in the upstairs before we had it downstairs. First marriage in this church? Okay. He's a K-State student. Not still. He graduated. That's right. That'd be like a 56-year man. That would be wonderful. And as our source of information for those times past, you would not have heard a Christmas sermon on Christmas Day in this congregation. Now, we've come a little bit around on that one. So we do hear. The elders have decided that as that is, I'll explain some terminologies in case they're unfamiliar with it. Has everyone heard about Easter and Christmas, Christians? They only pop up out of their hole on those 2 holidays. We don't get to take a position on them, but we can acknowledge they exist. And they come visit us on those days. And if we're going to talk to them about Christ, it should be at least on the 2 days they come and look for it. Now, granted, yes, our sermons are all about Christ.
I grew up in a church that every Christmas and Easter, we were what was not right to celebrate Christmas.
Did you guys hear that? Have you ever had that "this is not Christ's birthday" sermon I mean, really, by show of hands. Give it up. Because I've heard it in churches of Christ all over America.
Right? I'm not going to a church where they sing Happy Birthday to Jesus on that morning. That's interesting.
Okay. So you are like a full spectrum church shopper.
My grandfather in his 80s preached his first sermon on Christmas, about Christmas, and he said, when you're celebrating Christ's birthday today, if that's what we want to do, that would be fine. We won't at the church, but that would be fine. My question to you is, what are you going to give Jesus on his birthday?
There you go.
Continue to talk about giving your life over to Christ. That's growth. Here's a man in his 80s who stopped preaching against Christmas to reach people on Christmas because that's where they were.
Right. That's the exact debate that the elders have had. And what we have decided is that in that we can still shield ourselves by saying we talk about Christ every Sunday in this house. We can target the topic of the sermon on those 2 days to try to do the one thing we're supposed to do, which, by the way, in Scripture is not defend your tradition. It's talk to people about Christ. The reason you have a story is so that you can use that as an introduction to others to talk about the person for why you have the story. So we allow bits of, would it be Christmas with air quotes, to enter into the sermon on that day or on the day around it. So don't be surprised when you hear it. It's about what we're supposed to do on any given day when we come together as Christians to worship Christ. Yes, ma'am. No, you're not. And don't ever apologize for that again. We've had this discussion.
So isn't there like, for one, this is my opinion, I feel like we should, despite when Jesus was born, we weren't around that time, we weren't there. But don't we just celebrate that he came, he died for us and rose from the grave? And for two, isn't there something in the Bible that says, I don't know where I read it, but about the Easter and Christmas Christians?
So that you just gave us a lot to unpack, so we'll try to move through it quickly. So the first part, I had the answer and it slipped away. So we'll disregard your question. How many times have you seen that by a public speaker? Only they do it with a lot more art and style and less directness. So what was the first part again? Yeah.
Is like, don't we just need to be grateful that we don't know when he was born. It's God.
Right. So, okay, thank you. It was the birthday part. Jews don't celebrate birthdays. Drop the mic. Why do we? So, you showed up late to Christ. Thank you.
So when you say Jews don't, you mean specifically in Scripture, right? Because Jews, as far as even Hasidic and conservatives, do celebrate certain bar mitzvahs and things like that. So I just wanted to...
Yes, they celebrate certain days for periods moving through life. They do not celebrate a birthday.
It doesn't generally run around a certain age, though, so that's why I was...
Yeah. My bar mitzvah would be the day I celebrate every year. But it's different. That's not a birth day. That's a day of my maturity. That's the day I become a man in my culture. That's what's important. Because now I have duties, responsibilities to my culture, to myself, and to my God. That's the day I pick them up and carry them and bear that burden on my own shoulders in that culture. Vastly different. Consider it a day of ascension. and you've got jobs to do after that. So the birthday part is purely Western culture. We wanted to find it. We wanted to make it, and we made it. Yes, ma'am.
The word Easter is not in most Bibles. It's in one translation, I believe. And
I think it's the King James. I think it's the King James.
yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere in the Bible that they celebrated
Correct.
He was just born, and the census and everything was taken all that.
Yeah, we try to get into the nearest possible date we can get.
But as far as celebrating, they never celebrated it during, in the Bible, in the New Testament, and they celebrated it just around resurrection every first day.
Right. So let's get, yes. So you just unpacked the second part of her question, which was, where are they in Scripture? They're not. That word in your King James Version, when was the King James written? 16? Okay. So congratulations. We're taking our terminologies and we're stamping them onto specific parts of Scripture to support an ideology that belongs solely to one church. Wait till we get to talk about versions of the Bible. There's going to be rioting and food thrown up in here. So, they're not in Scripture. Neither one of those two events. What is in Scripture is you're absolutely right. What we try to do here every Sunday, and in fact, you're going to hear about that this morning because I'm doing the Lord's Supper. And I specifically tied these two events together. So we'll do it here. However, know your tribe. How many years ago did we accidentally leave that little tree out there in the foyer? Some of you might remember. I got emotional scars. It was an accident. It was a tiny little tree. Yeah, like see tiny little tree. Didn't even have any real decorations on it, and it wasn't real. And we had a non-church related event here because we love the building to be used. It's a resource and an asset, not holy ground. And the tree got left up. I don't know why. All I know is that words were spoken. Some people had a significant emotional event about it. And it disappeared. It did. We were like, ooh. We'd be like, what tree? That's almost literally how it happened. So, we got to be careful. Do what? Did I? It wouldn't surprise me. A fake tree giving me sap. Yes, Tracy.
I know we discussed this in our small group a little bit too about the tree that was left up, but
It made its way into our small group because we were all there during this event.
well, my thing was if it really bothered somebody, fine, take it down. If it is a struggle for them that it was a pagan symbol, then it's okay. Then
Yeah.
it's neither here nor there. Take it down.
So that's the, yeah.
Their viewpoint and that.
Yes, and that's the embodiment of not being a stumbling block. It has to be taken on voluntarily. It's something you choose. You cannot be directed not to be somebody's stumbling block. That's the opposite of how it works. So we did. We apologized to those involved, asked them to forgive us, and the tree went away. And it was all very polite, all very informal. Tears were shed, hugs were given, salvations were restored. So we're going to do a Sunday class on that. We're going to do a class on that. It's one of the remaining topics. But we need to get through our traditions. And so any other comments on Christmas? Because there's one other holiday to discuss.
I was amazed one Sunday. I was preaching for a church and moved there in August. Didn't know what the tradition was. Sunday morning showed up just before Christmas, and there were 2 Christmas trees set up on the stage. and I thought, well, this is different. and this is what they had chosen to do because people would come. That was something that they would use to reach them, pagan or not, as far as the background, because that's not what it meant to them.
Yeah.
It didn't mean pagan stuff to them. And so there's an interesting argument to be made on both sides of that. And historically, I love this. I didn't realize that cultures didn't celebrate birthdays.
When you're too illiterate to know the calendar, you do not know your birthday. Welcome to the Dark Ages. Wait.
Backing up a little bit, I think sometimes the reason that we have we're shy about saying anything on either Christmas or Easter is because we don't want to look like everybody else. We want to set ourselves apart, and so it's like, oh well, we don't do this, we don't do that, and it's like,
I'll allow that, but I'll tell you that's not what my spiritual fathers taught me as our tradition. We want to be right. We want to be scriptural. And we'll die on this hill. And so, one, it's not there. So we want to be right. The friction is when being right becomes more important than talking about Christ if the opportunity presents itself. That's our rub. We're not wrong. Sometimes we have to allow ourselves to give way to Christ. You ever met anyone who's dead right? Walk across any intersection in New York City against the light. You will be dead right. They don't play there. Some cultures don't. New York City traffic has its own set of ruthless rules. Okay. One more holiday. Let's talk about Easter. Feels more spiritual, right? Does it?
Yes.
When you, I got one yes. I got any other yeses? Head nods, north, south, east, west, whatever.
Only because we don't make Christmas religious.
Boom. Can you have an Easter without? Now, some of the young men who were at the campus center this week, when I had my opportunity to share my story with them, have heard this part of it from me. There was no Christ in my Christmas when I was young. It was Father Christmas. Dude brought a huge bag of gifts, whatever we could afford. Usually food stuff and clothes, but it was gifts. And Christ was never mentioned in my home. But on Easter, he couldn't be avoided. Somehow he was there on Easter. I don't know the difference. I don't know why my mom taught him different. We'll get to the words Resurrection Sunday in a minute, right?
Well, I think it's different because a lot of different religions celebrate Easter as Passover, and they celebrate the death and the resurrection of Christ, and it has incorporated itself into everything as a religious holiday.
I'll buy that. I was going to come at that in a different way, but thank you for introducing it. Yes, ma'am.
Didn't it start as a German-based holiday?
Okay, let's talk about Yoster. So, how about this? Yes and no. Every culture has a spring rebirth ceremony. You get outside Central Europe, and it stops being a goddess, and that's who it is in Europe. They're all gods and goddesses, all these seasoned spirits. You start getting into the Eastern cultures, which are much older. The event's still there, but it's no longer a god or goddess. It's a spirit. Definitively a spirit. Yoster's just the one who won. Okay? Because that's where most Christians are clustered post-Middle Ages or post-Black Death.
It goes back into Babylonian. I'm not talking about recent Babylon. I'm talking about historic, prehistoric almost.
Yeah.
And it was a spring festival, but it was focused on fertility.
Yeah.
Because of spring.
And Yoster is the goddess of fertility and rebirth. Sir.
But what we now call Easter, I don't think they called it that at the time, but it has been celebrated from very early Christian times.
Yes.
I mean, one of the big controversies in the 2nd century was when to celebrate it. Yeah.
I love the way you guys telegraph. So I'm gonna back up first. I want to finish Yoster. Then we'll go into how all these events start. So yes, a northern European goddess where it's really cold. And they've got some weird cultural rules. You couldn't eat eggs over her holiday. So what do we do with them? We boil them and decorate them. That's where that comes from. And by the way, for whatever squirrely reason it is, I'm going to use an animal metaphor here purposefully, the eggs are laid by a rabbit. That's where your rabbit comes from. Right? So as that is a huge cluster of Christians, and it's part of Europe that escapes much of the Black Plague part of history. I mean, there's still 50% casualties, don't get it twisted. But there's more of them left than the rest of them at the end of it. And holidays sometimes win wars of attrition. They wear you down and wear you out, and last man standing claims the holiday. Welcome to Easter. So,
Just give you a little more. I remember so many gods and goddesses, so whatever they consider to be historical is more hysterical. However, it was the goddess who was a birth type that laid eggs and was transformed somehow into a rabbit and still retained the ability.
yeah, every culture has different relatives. He just gave you the Testament version that came across the water with them when they migrated to America.
That's why you see the rabbit and you see a bird and
Yeah.
retains the ability to lay eggs.
Yeah, weird stuff. So what do we do as Christians? The 2nd and 3rd centuries are spiritual war. And it is a wonderful time. You think that it's hilarious today that somebody out there considers it their job to make each day of the year a thing. Today's coffee day. Tomorrow's donut day. Today's stupidity day. Somebody's actually out there trademarking these things and then just throwing them on the internet to see which ones stick. Well, this is what happened in the 2nd century. They are thinking up holidays left and right. They're trying to imprint their culture on every other culture that exists. And the best way to do that is by having parties. Everybody comes to a party. Everybody loves to be celebrated. Everybody loves to celebrate. And so they just start grabbing all these events. And they start stapling some Christianity onto them. And for this one, it's easy, right? Because what event occurs right over the same period? The resurrection. Our single most important event. The pivotal turning point in history. And so they do. They start celebrating it. They bring everybody in. We have masses. We do the traditions, and we build on all of that. And when you go home, if you happen to have egg baskets, nobody cares. So we have Easter. If you go to some of the farther flung parts of the world, eggs and baskets will be paid lip service, and their local traditions will be given the place of honor in seating. Sir?
You think maybe the leaders of the churches at that time had a different motive? It wasn't an incorporation. It was, how do we teach the people who can't read, who don't know, how do we teach the masses? Play on that word.
Right. So,
How do we teach them, and is this a tool to teach the gospel by the church, and it becomes incorporated as a
I will allow for some of them to be altruistic. Definitively, I can tell you that most of the leaders, and I'll die on this hill of history in front of you, did not do it for that reason. It was specifically about a consolidation of power. It was heinous. It was wrong. They should not have done it. Within every group of bad people, you can always find a few good souls. So yes, some of them at the lower level, working around in our community, would have been absolutely altruistic, just wanting to spread the gospel the way that I think Scripture intends. Whenever you consolidate power at the top, whoever's sitting at the top of the pyramid, you may as well just whack them off. They have only one reason for being there. That's personal opinion. I'm giving it to you as fact because I feel very emphatic about it.
So in the 2nd century, Christianity was very much in the minority in the Roman Empire. It wasn't until the 4th century before it started becoming popular. And so what power are you talking about? Are you talking about power within the church?
So prior to becoming the state religion in 336, 313-ish, there is a war inside our own faith for monopolization of power at the regional level. And well before Constantine gives them the keys to the kingdom, the secular kingdom, we consolidate into 7 spiritual areas. I mean, I know you know them, and I know most of you would probably know them if we brought out the little kids map and we said, oh, look, Constantinople. Oh, look, Kiev. Oh, look, here's Rome. And there is a beginning of organization and establishment of structure. You're not wrong in timelining that all out. So we stay where we are in history as we move into it. But, man, you ever want to cook me off, just mention Oregon. Some of those Greek early Christian fathers had done us no favors, spewing their Greek logic all over our faith. Back on track. The Easters. All right. Why is Easter so less threatening than anything associated with Halloween?
I guess it kind of depends on which traditions we're talking about here. You know, it seems like nobody really is all that threatened about birds turning into bunnies and laying eggs.
That's right. Cadbury bunnies don't threaten me.
Yeah, but when you start getting into maypoles, people start getting triggered.
Right. So, I think we can all acknowledge that, right? It's a different threat. It's perceived differently. The question is, how does that impact the adoption and perception of the holiday? Easter is easy to take. All these secular things that people staple onto it. As long as we maintain our focus on our religious purpose, it's easy for us to allow these other non-threatening things to collapse onto it.
As long as they're commercialized.
Well, that's what it is to be an American. So that's why there's not all the friction that there is related to other holidays. Having Christmas trees and all that other stuff was an argument, more than you might think. Because every culture has a mean person in their history who's related to this thing that they have of gift giving. His common name in Northern Europe is Krampus, and he goes around and he steals from people. So getting the tree into Christmas was harder than getting the eggs onto Easter. Because there's a threat level that people associate with things. Easter has always been totally non-threatening. And we don't feel any threat from it. Do you feel any threat for Easter? Has anyone ever said, war on Easter? No. And they never will until Christmas is gone. And it's the last holiday standing. But I think you'll be more involved in a physical conflict then than you'll have worries about this spiritual one. Sir?
Is the Arabic world, do you think, the high holy days of obligation?
Is what?
The high holy days of obligation that the church established, these are the days you must.
So, how does that relate to this?
Well, I'm wondering myself.
I'd have to look at it. Yeah, right? Here's an obtuse concept. Go. So, the comment over there was, okay, how does this tie into the church's concept of high holy days? And now we're talking about the early capital C church. We're the lowercase church. So what are high holy days? It's like 7 or 9 of them. The ones you must celebrate as a Catholic. Ash Wednesday, Lent, Easter. There's a day of fasting or two, and then there's a couple others. And Christmas. So those are forced holidays. You must, if you're a good Catholic student of God. Those are protected, and this might be where we're tying it together. Protected by the church. If you ever want to have fun in a very small community, upset the church. If it's a Catholic community. I have one right down the road. You can go there. It will be very odd for you. not to be a Catholic and to be a part of that community. And so in other parts of the world also that are Catholic countries, you'll see those are the days the Catholic flags come out. Those are national holidays because the church and the state are so intertwined, they're one. The church controls the curriculum in schools, and it controls what goes on in your daily life. It controls the economic calendar and all those other things. So you got to be careful with that. High holy days are directed by man, forced upon you to be observed as a form of your religion. Okay. I got a head nod, so I'm complete with that. Be careful with those. We need to be careful against that. We're very young. We're less than 100 years old. You really haven't even yet begun to develop your traditions as law. But you will, if we're not careful.
I was kind of, and maybe this doesn't quite tie in, my brain is kind of spinning about things, but just this morning I said to Trey, it's so hard, because I feel like often Sundays work for me. I come here and I feel like I'm working, making sure to keep up details and get information in the bulletin and, all that kind of stuff. And I said, to try to come and simplify, I'm here on Sunday to worship. And to try to keep out all the extra stuff and the distractions, to try to focus and worship, because we're called to do that. And so I think for me, part of all that and the culture is to try to simplify and keep all the distractions out so that I can focus and worship how I've been told to and how we're supposed to do, what we've been authorized to do in our worship, I guess.
So I don't disagree. That should be your shield that you use when we consider change and new things. Remember that position? I know it's mentioned in the King James Bible. He's wrong. It's okay. Was that blasphemy for some of you?
It was a mistranslation.
I prefer wrong. But you're not incorrect. She said it's just a mistranslation. It's blatantly incorrect for the time and the period. The use of the word Easter when they slap Easter in there.
I didn't even realize it was in there.
You just glance over it. It's like the word bishop. Okay. However, this is where this holiday differs. The resurrection is in every one of the Gospels. It's the focal point of creation. It's our reason for being. So can you celebrate? Can you separate holidays and do the part you want outside and do the part we want inside and still be right?
As long as you recognize the difference.
Okay, so did you hear that? As long as you recognize the difference is a position that you can take and stand on. We taught our children 2 different Christmases. We taught our children 2 different Easters. We specifically made sure that they understood which parts were secular, which parts were spiritual, and what our role and function was in each. The secular part could come and go. I could always choose not to celebrate that part of Christmas. And some years of my life I haven't, when we were all separated and going about our business. But I always remember my spiritual part of it. Always. Here we do it every Sunday. It's important to us. You'll hear that again this morning.
So, the prior answer to the yes and distinction and teaching the differences is that I am one that suffers from seeing how far the other direction it goes in the pagan concepts. And so, it is something that I stress for myself and also recognize, and it's difficult for me because I have seen it. So I do know the differences. I do teach the differences to my children, my grandchildren, things like that. But it is hard for some people. I'm not certain as to who had the issue with the tree, knee-high tree or whatever it was, but I can understand. I mean, as long as they're not thinking about them, I can understand fear of what a true pagan concept is of certain holidays. And so it is out there, and there are people who suffer from that.
Hold on, we've got to go here.
the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus.
Did you have a Christmas costume? The Easter Bunny would come in here and...
But as far becoming a member then of the church and learning that it is not Christ's birthday, I mean, because growing up I knew that's why we celebrated, but we didn't have nativity scenes or anything. But anyway, we were sort of attacked by the church when they found out we had Santa Claus, a few people attacked, because that's lying to our children. And Easter Bunny is lying to our children. Now, we never said there is a Santa Claus. Santa Claus just was. When the kids asked, is Santa real? No, I didn't lie. But we always approach it with the fact that it's a game. And the lady that approached me about it and was very upset, I said, when your daughter brings her baby, her doll to her, and is really hungry and eats fed, do you say, your baby's not real? And going to Disney World, kids are so excited to see Mickey and Minnie, but I don't know very many parents that would go in, and kids are so excited about seeing Minnie and Mickey and say, they're not real. We've been very careful about not making them real, but pretend. If that makes any sense at all.
It does, and it's a way. The most unfortunate part of all that is that, you know, a member of the church felt so strongly about their personal position that they could convict you because it was not your own. That's a sin. Okay, there was one other, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Round two, go.
Okay, I just have to say very quickly, the same person had 7 children, and every one of those kids, when they got married,
Had an Easter bunny?
had Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. It was something growing up that they missed out on. It's a magical.
Right. I know what you mean. I'm picturing having the Easter bunny and Santa at my wedding. I missed an opportunity there. Yes, ma'am.
Although, like, we all know the truth and whatnot and all this, I would think let kids dream of the good. Let them think about Santa Claus and what good he brings to kids. And yeah, eventually they're going to always find out, but I would think let the kids believe in the good so they have a more positive mindset in their childhood and the imagination going forward. I mean, won't let them believe in that. I mean, we'll let them believe in the good.
Ray, how about we let each family decide for themselves when they're not good?
Ooh. Wow. Can we do that? Can we allow for some of those individual differences? Right. Because I heard a very underlying threat there, and Tracy was like, "You don't let them decide."
She's right, and ultimately we raise our families and we raise them with Christ first. And so then we raise them throughout the week, is my point, throughout the year. And many different things other than these holidays come up. And we have to make the right decisions based on Scripture under Christ. And therefore we do lead our families.
And show yourself enough grace to learn, grow, and change. The things I thought about Christ when I first went in the water, some of which I found to be absolutely true and I still stand by today. I have learned things in my study of Scripture that have caused me to say, you didn't have that right, and allow yourself to grow and change.
Kind of an interesting thing, though, how there's this continuum spirituality completely out of it. It's mind-boggling to me how somebody can have, that much of a blind spot and still be as intelligent as she is. But it's a testimony to how some people will manage to twist their thinking to come up with a result that they've always wanted.
Fred.
I guess as we have these conversations, I'm thinking, how many of us have or have not had conversations with our children as they're growing up and at different stages of maturity and make sure that they understand the difference between, for instance, the oldest child figures out Santa Claus, but let's just let the little brother
That's right. They get the opportunity to at least be your age before you force them to confront this thing that you think is no longer a secret. No, they don't. However, Deuteronomy says you must. It's not ambiguous in Deuteronomy chapter 6. When it talks about raising your child, it's directive. Every day as you walk with them, you will talk with them. When you sit down to your meals, when you do the things that you do, you must coach, teach, mentor your child. If you don't, I can make the argument that spiritually and morally, he's not your child. He's somebody else's. Biologically, he's yours. We do a DNA test. But if he doesn't have your morals and values, is he yours or is he society's? A way to look at it, if you need to convict yourself or if you need to reinforce your convictions about it, you will raise the children you have. Ma'am.
The one thing, though, about both holidays is it is one time, or two times, that the world, the Christian world, is at least thinking of Christ. There's not, it's just heartwarming to me to know that there are those people out there that, even though they don't follow the Bible exactly or whatever, have what they call the Christian faith. And it's encouraging to know that they're out there with some values that will help the U.S. keep their Christian values, that kind of thing.
I agree with everything except the last 5 words. I don't care about the United States in regard to this comment. So, yes. Do you feel the difference in Christmas? It's amazing when the entire world focuses on one thing and begins to do that. It's horrible that we can't do that every day. So one more comment, and then I've got to make a closeout statement, and then we're out of time.
I just wonder if we really think that maybe Jesus is upset that we celebrate the incarnation, or that he's upset that the world recognizes the resurrection.
We think he's upset that the rest of the world... So his question was, do you really think the world's upset that we celebrate his birthday? Or that Jesus is upset? And I would say, no, what people are upset about is that they don't celebrate it their way. Most of the world thinks freedom means free to be like me, like you. Freedom means free to be like them. And that's the rub for cultures. Okay. There's only 3 bullets left. We can cover them the week after next. I will not be here next week. I need a volunteer to teach this class. The topic can be on anything you want. If you want to teach more than 1 week, just let me know. But I will not be on this stage floor next week. So if you have a topic and you want to talk about it, then please let me know. Otherwise, we'll come together and you guys can stare at each other until one of you gets up and just starts greeting each other, and you'll have an hour-long meet and greet. I'll be okay with either because I won't be here. And we'll pick this up again the week after next. So please, if one of you want to, get with me, and we'll talk about the process for that. So we're complete with tradition. Our next class will be on the preferences about it. That's when the gloves come off. And we'll talk about how we feel about it personally and individually when we meet again. So, thank you for your time.